Alrighty. What are we talking
Back.
about?
Well, Garth had an interesting idea that he wants to talk about people who remember their birth.
Okay, so Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan thing. I started listening. I was like, I don't quite like not his acting. I think he's an actor. Like, anyway, he's a very strange person. So I got bored
Did
listening
you
to
connect
it.
with that? Were you like, oh yes?
No, so I was about to change it, and then he's like, I remember being in my mom's womb, and I was like, "What the fuck is this guy saying?"
Takes
Yeah, I
his
was
finger
like-
off the
I was
button.
like,
Okay.
"Whoa, let me see what this guy says." And then he's like, "No." He then remembers a memory of the actual birth, like being born. Like he remembers this process, and I was like, "Let me listen to this guy a little bit longer."
Yo, that's when I would have changed.
Yeah.
She's like,
So then I actually just then he went into that scientific realm of the periodic table, and that obviously interests me a little bit because I've got a science background and I study engineering. So that's when he caught me a bit, and then he went on a tangent again about into his dreams. So this kind of got me just thinking back because I've got a very bad memory. I can't remember. When I say like remember, I can't remember going fishing on the Vaal River. Like I remember it there because I've seen a photo before, or my dad would tell me the story of when we went on the Vaal River fishing when we grew up, or playing soccer, or going to school, or my school there. Like I can't remember that. But then I'll talk to Vix, and she can remember clear as day, like what dolls she played at her granny's house with after school every day, or remembers going to the little spa and buying a lollipop or whatever. Like she remembers these finer details of quite a young age. So that got me thinking, like, all of our brains are obviously wired different to some degree to remember these things or not remember. And really then try and ask, because I don't believe this guy can remember being born. Like that for me is a bit
also,
far.
yeah, it's a bit far fetched.
Is it a
sounds like-
memory or is it a dream?
Or is it a bit of too much drugs in his life? Like I'm pretty sure Ozzy Osbourne will tell you about when he was born.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, and then by looking into it a little bit, people do kind of remember these very, very early stages of like, I was 1, I was 2, but how far back can I get this? So I wanted to try and see, like, is it physically, scientifically possible with your brain in that infant development to latch onto this thought or memory and latch onto it that you can then truly remember like, so you might not remember seeing what it was, but you remember the feeling. So like the feeling of the thought is there, or that is there from a scientific realm. And then he talks on a tangent into dreams. So then he goes onto this thing, which I'm quite keen to explore on just for myself, because I have these vivid dreams, scary dreams, whatever it is, and we all dream. And then we spoke about it where this dream becomes a reality, or like you really push this thought or this goal, this dream of what you're doing, and then it kind of forms into place. Like, how is that from a scientific doctor side?
Yeah, so I mean, look,
possibility.
Looking at neuroplasticity in the brain and your ability to assimilate knowledge and your ability to remember things, it seems like we are able to start assimilating memories at around 3 years old. It's possible, maybe, that in your 2s, but lower than that, absolutely not. I would be very hard pressed to believe anything that guy says, which is sad because I have also seen his representation of the periodic table and how he's doing it according to natural frequencies, and I do like that. But the kind of person that can believe that they can remember their own birth, I don't think that that's very scientifically sound. That being said, I do think that memories that you can't necessarily remember still play a role in your day-to-day life as past experiences, either bad or good. And we know that we assimilate traumas throughout our lives that construct how we react to things and how we view the world and how we form connections with other people. And those are not necessarily conscious memories. So there can be some traumas in your life that were traumatic for you at the time as a child that you don't necessarily remember. And they shape the way that you think and the way that your body will react. We see people react to strange things. They might see a picture or a painting and their heart rate goes up and they start sweating and why am I having this like visceral reaction to this thing? And it's generally because it's your brain remembering a past trauma without you remembering the actual memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So definitely you can remember thoughts and feelings without being able to remember the event, for sure. And we know that. We discussed in the podcast before, your brain sleeps, or we sleep for two things: to remember and to forget. And when you sleep, your brain tries to forget difficult experiences and to reshape them in your mind as not as bad as they were, and also to be able to remember new skills. That's a going forward. But if you're looking back to try and look at, okay, well, how far back can we remember things, if we can call it, in the lizard brain of experiences that we maybe don't remember, but we still viscerally respond to? We don't know.
So, like, I think this is very because, like, we would maybe have the similar, like, memory, if you want to call it. So I can remember the day that I got married. It was not long ago. It's like 7 years ago. That memory is there, but it's really helped with photos. Like, I need to go and, like, if I just go through it's like my wedding's on my laptop, I just can go in there and just, like, go through the day quickly, very cool photos. And I'm like, oh, I remember that. Oh, it's such a cool. And then I'm like, I remember that. So, like, the memory's there. It taps in and it brings it back out, and I can remember that thing. But I can't remember it. Like, I can't remember anything else. Like, I went to Japan on a karate tour. I can't remember the dojo and what it looked like. And we competed in some hall. There's one memory that I remember, it's the crabs, but it's because I've got a photo of it at my mom's house. And it's me standing in front of the big fish tank with these big giant spider crabs behind me. But I can't remember it. But someone like Vicky remembers vividly.
So that's also, we do see that as a difference between men and women, not always, but it's in general that women remember actual experiences much more clearly than men do. Like, if you ask Vicky to tell you about her wedding day, she'll be able to, like, play by play, minute by minute.
The flowers, the this and that, and what was on the table and who sat where.
Yeah. So that's just a difference in how our brains are wired, and maybe recall intelligence is higher in women, I would say.
You think that's maybe got something to do with motherhood, though? Like, an ability to remember things might help you protect your kid or remember something that could be influenced on that regard of, like, okay, well, that's going to help me assess whether this was a previous situation to how to react to it now, because I have that memory base or that emotional intelligence around that. I don't know. Could be linked to.
I mean, fathers should be involved with their kids as well. So historically, it was.
Yeah, but historically, the dad was out hunting or defending the land or whatever, and he wasn't. So for him, it was more like the presence and the future, like not so much.
But I think that's where this ties in, where we obviously talking about the same stuff that we're listening to, and we enjoy very similar things. So we're watching the Paul Rosoli with the Lex Friedman thing now, and we're just talking about the jungle stuff, and like how important the jungle is. And they talk about how the female is just the main thing that looks after, everything in the jungle. Like, everything on the female side is like the person that looks after. But then again, like, these memories now, like, again, like you're saying, okay, women can think back and use those memories a little bit better. That's because maybe they need to apply it now in the future. And we were saying now, but like, we're going to write off what we've done in our past because it's our past. Like, it's not going to help. But how can it help us now in the future? Because, like, I'm trying to bring up James and Emily in a certain way that it's not like my parents missed things or did things wrong, but I want to do things better than what they did.
That's the point. Yep.
So if I can relive some of those memories through photos a bit better, whatever it is. So I'm documenting, like, not documenting my kids, but I take a lot of photos and videos and short videos because it's funny and I want to relive that in the future. So if I'm bored one day, I can go and just flick through my phone through, this year and like 2017 or whatever it was, or fuck, they weren't even born then, 2020 or 2021 or whatever it was, and I can flick through their ages and go revisit that memory. That's obviously a future thing just for my own benefit. But now if I look back at my past, if I can go and rekindle my past a bit, maybe I can do things better for their future, like put them in the correct schooling, put them through things that I maybe think that I missed out, like a good rugby school, whatever it is, or just good parenting or good.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at the roles maybe of a man and you're teaching your kid how to hunt, and it's like, cool, this is how you sharpen an arrow and this is how you're going to go track the animal and how you're going to throw it or whatever. Like, that doesn't require a lot of maybe big memory. But maybe as a female back in the day, you're like, okay, we need this plant and this leaf and this is where you're going to go find it and this time of year sort of harvest. It's a much more like memory-based, information-based sort of activity than what let's just track an animal and hunt it, or that type of thing. So maybe that's where the differences come in how we also process memories and how we get to use information from what it was sort of directed from in those sort of
I think
regards.
maybe that also brings into like why I don't mind like parenting James and Emily from like a behavioral standpoint, or like just enforcing like parenting abilities, because I don't want Vicky to do some of those things. Like I want to just make sure that, hey, James, listen, Ems, that's it, no more, done, rather than taking those standpoints because they're simpler standpoints, because those are simple traits. If I look at what Vicky implies, there is a lot of memory-based stuff that she is putting into those kids.
It's also more emotional attachment, and maybe like as most men are not as emotionally connected as a female. There's like memory, and that has a very big emotional connotation to like taking back and those sort of feelings and that sort of association with that type of thing. So like I know for myself, if I go into a memory thing, like I can see a photo and that maybe will trigger or whatever else, but it's not something which I tend to hold on to from that, or like there's certain songs that I'll hear and I'll immediately think of a certain person, or that type of thing, or smells. I go, okay, that's like something I used to smell at my grandma's house or whatever. But from a memory point of view, like I always, triggers have a bigger effect than me like just recalling stuff.
And then anything like from your side in terms of like, let's say, so I brought up the fact of like, if you go and you revisit some of these things, it's a good conversation point to have with like your parents. So like, by me maybe taking, because I haven't been thinking of this a lot, and now literally in the last couple of weeks saying, okay, cool, not like you go to your parents and there's nothing to talk about, but like they really dig revisiting that memory, and they obviously have a better idea of it because they're older. You're only 1, 2 or 3 or 4 years old or 10 years old.
Yeah.
It's maybe a good conversation point to try and keep your parents in a healthier state of mind, reliving some of their good times with you as kids or their past.
Yes.
Because they are starting to lose out on the present.
I do think you need to be careful. So I will group these two things into people who don't have Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and people who do. So people who don't have Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, I think it's quite healthy to visit the past and chat. People with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's generally tend to fixate on old memories as if it's almost happening now. So it's important that you do engage with them in the present, because they have lost touch and continue to lose touch a little bit with the present, which obviously detracts from their quality of life quite a lot. With past memories for yourself, and maybe heading back to the reason that you want to remember anything is to grow and learn from it. I think that's why we have memory. That's kind of the whole point. And I think that certain memories, like we spoke about earlier, which potentially you don't remember, or maybe even do remember, but maybe you don't remember to a full extent, which have caused PTSD or anxiety or depression or whatever it is, we see quite a lot of benefit in patients. It's very new studies, and we don't have a lot of information on it, but it's definitely something that's gaining more and more funding. I listened to a podcast that Huberman was talking about, where they said they've got a $40 million grant into studying some of the psychedelics. So how do we revisit these past experiences on a high, on a trip, and reform them in our minds to more positive outcomes? So what they're doing is, and it's extremely important that you don't misread what I'm saying here and saying, do MDMA and feel better. Not at all. What they're doing is they're doing MDMA at, I don't want to say correct doses, but at prescribed doses, which are very high doses, more higher doses than what you would see at your average EDM festival.
Like party, let's go for party, take however much MDMA you take, I don't even know.
And then they guide you through thought processes. So what happens is, when you have any experience, the brain will be flooded with neurochemicals, which will then form pathways and form certain associations in these pathways. Generally with trauma, those are bad experiences and bad connotations. And that kind of becomes this hardwired in your brain that when you have a similar experience, that's why you get anxiety, is because in the past, that experience was a bad thing. Now, even though you might be safe, maybe you're in an environment with people who love you, a similar thing can come up and it can trigger something. So what these guys are doing, and it's showing incredible value is they put you on this high, they flood your brain with these neurochemicals, and then through auditory guidance, so they speak you through it. You close your eyes and you go through. They will speak you through a more healthy way of dealing with something, and that forms a connection in your brain with those neurochemicals to now a better outcomes. Now, when these things come up,
Do the chemicals put you into that state of thought of that trauma?
that fight or flight where it floods your brain with chemicals, it's basically simulating that. It's not the same chemical, so you would have like adrenaline, noradrenaline at the time, but basically what it's doing is it's flooding your brain with enough neurochemicals to, for that time, create neuroplasticity, the ability to create new experiences and new memories. And as you get older, you lose neuroplasticity, so your brain becomes less and less plastic. It's not that your brain is plastic, but you understand what I'm saying. It's like a term they use for the ability to learn. So for a moment, under this massive high, you have increased neuroplasticity and the ability to create new neural pathways. And what they're trying to do is attach this to a more positive outcome. And they're doing this with lots of things. There's MDMA, obviously high dose psilocybin, and it's a DMT or DMT.
But there was also LSD. So the one lady talks about, it's on the Joe Rogan, she's very funny, old, like quite an old lady, Amanda Fledling or something like that. And she talks about how they're doing LSD treatment in a very old age home. So like they've taken an old age home, given them a very small dose of LSD, and everyone's just happier. Not like they're all high and walking around, but everyone's just a little bit happier, and they're not talking about how bad the food is and like all the general shit. Like we go visit Granny. Okay, we can't really chat to her now because she's completely, she just can't remember us. But about a year ago, it was moaning about the food. Like you say, like they're repeating
they fixate
thoughts of like the food's poor, and like we go down to the kitchen or we smell it, and I'm like, it smells amazing. Or like the food came, it's like nice little thing of jelly and like rice and meats, and it's like, this is quite a good meal, you know, like what's there to moan about? Or the staff are grabbing me or pulling me when I go to the bathroom, like, Granny, you are 80 something kilograms, it's hard to lift you, and you're frail. Even when I try to lift her, I'm like hurting her, you know, like, so she's fixating on these things. But what they found in this home was that like everyone was just a little bit happier to the staff. They were nicer to the staff. No one was abusive, because some of the elderly, because they're confused, they so there was less of that.
LSD is interesting. The reason that they don't really use LSD for what the purposes I was talking about is because it's a very long acting drug, so it's a long trip and people need to go home. So you don't have them there for like
3 days later.
Yeah. So in the old age home, I suppose that's quite actually a pro.
So I think with the MDMA is quite short. DMT is even shorter, but it's quite a very
it's intense experience.
It's too intense. So you have to just watch over that. But then the psilocybin one, they were saying also that they're having a good experience because there's a very good pre and a very good post, like counseling piece. So yes, there's the trip, whatever the experience. But what I've seen on a couple of things that I've looked into is that there's a month like build up. Yeah. And then the week after, the one or two guys that I've actually spoken to, the week after was actually the most incredible time, because they're rethinking these things. And like you said, like they're reshaping that anxiety or that traumatic thing to make you deal with it better. And the conversation I had with one of the clients that I'm trying to help them with just alcoholism and things like that, the discussion, because they come from, born in like 1960 or whatever it is, 59, so 60 something years old, they don't understand, because they see that as a trip. It's a drug, and they can't see it as, how's this going to help me reshape my traumatic experience.
Well, I don't necessarily think that it's a good idea to do it without the correct people guiding you through it, because that neuroplasticity works both ways. So if you have a bad trip, it just deepens that neural pathway of negative association. So you become more anxious, to the point of phobias where you have to institutionalize, because anything can make you...
Yeah, but that's why prep and setting and everything is so vitally important.
It makes a huge...
So the one study that we looked into, whatever it is, it was like a month's prep. There's certain food things that you have to do. They based on your month prep, they work out the size of the dose for what they're trying to get out of your experience, because you could have this huge PTSD, or you could have just this high anxiety. So it's like these two. This is trauma. This is anxiety. Like you can't give them the same dose. And then, like you said, it's super guided. You've got a doctor on site, and you've got the person that guides you through to get the right thought. Because what you're trying to say is that they're shaping that thought and that memory. So they're taking the memory and they're attaching that new pathway to it to make sure that it's a positive outcome, you know.
And the outcomes are pretty incredible. So basically what they'll do is they'll take a group of people and they'll compare them to what we would normally do. So like in the depression group, they'll compare them to SSRIs, like Lexamil, for example. I think that's an SNRI, but serotonin drugs. And they compare what was the finding now between the two groups. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure what the right word is, the hallucinogens group have outperformed all of, if we can call it, Western medicines
with longer lasting effects.
Well, do you think it's maybe because a person is going back into a sober state of mind? Like the person is experiencing this experience. If you're putting them on a SSRI, whatever, you're dampening that thought.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
so
it's the rewiring process.
It's the rewiring. So basically what you're doing with why hallucinogenics are so potent is because you're treating the root cause.
Yeah.
This is the one time in trauma that we're actually treating a root cause.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that trauma counseling up to this point has been useless, because there's a lot that you go back into that, you try and deal. But when you're throwing medicine at it, you're always just numbing the issue. You're putting anesthetic cream on a wound, so the wound doesn't feel like it's there anymore, but the wound is still there. Whereas this is a new approach, which is, in my opinion, makes a bit more sense.
But again, they're using let's call it a drug in a one-time effect only. We are not using, you're not smoking weed on an everyday basis. You're not taking psilocybin on an everyday basis of this dose of a gram or whatever it is to be in a different state of mind.
Correct.
You are going through a process of being sober for a month, having an experience, guided, and then there's also a follow-up to make sure that the outcome is what was hopefully there. And then it's like, okay, cool. What else do we need to then deal with, in my everyday life? So it's then adding the Be Nice Guys stuff into it, the 5 pillars of like, okay, if you're doing all these things and you are in a sober, healthy state, your memory could actually be of use to then, work forward. So what are we taking from our past to benefit now moving forward?
Yeah, through trauma, people also block out memories and they don't deal with it, and it still affects them even to the point that they don't really know about it. So it's like, obviously with these things, you're just able to tap back into it. And like Ben says, like through anything, your body has different states. Like you can learn better at this time of the day or whatever it is. This is just a state you're creating which allows you to tap into this side of your brain easier. And then there's different ways that you can do it without drugs. It's just going to be harder to try to teach someone how to do that. So obviously this is just a tool to allow people to get to that state, and through the correct reprogramming or whatever, you're able to then achieve the success.
I think just with the memories thing as well is just that self-reflection. So like by me like looking into this a little bit about this guy saying, I can remember, being in my mom's tummy or whatever it was. I think what it's done for me in the last week or so, it's really made me just go and self-reflect on like who I am or like where I've come from, my journey to be here, 36 years old, like I've lived half my life pretty much already, to go back and be like, shit, what have I achieved and what can I maybe set up for my kids like to achieve in that, like if I know everything I know today, 20 years ago, could I be more successful or more, I don't know, just better? But obviously there's that time frame that we need to experience all these memories and things like that. But how can you use those memories to fast track these things? Like how can I set myself up by taking those memories that I don't remember, going and looking at photos and things like that to set myself up now a little bit better for those around me or for my next 30 years.
Well, is it important just to know for your next year? Is it just better for you to even understand you right now? Like you also have to look at it from that perspective. Like, cool, well, these are things that I enjoyed as a kid, but hey, I haven't done that. And like, would that be of use to me now to like make me feel happier or enjoyment or different experiences?
But that's like it makes me just goosebump up there. But that's exactly what I'm struggling with currently, is that I don't have an outlet of like, I've been sports inclined from when I was karate days. I mean, I did karate from 6 years old. We traveled when I was 9 to Japan. Then I did karate until I was 16, linking in with fishing and rugby. Then I had to choose one because it's just too many things to do. Then I chose the team sports. I was playing rugby, then I was doing fishing in the team. Then I was with my brothers and my dad, traveling for fishing. So there's all that. Then there's rugby leaving school. Then there's the CrossFit environment when I was like you with like-minded people the whole time. Yeah, I was competing individual, but I was traveling with Chris Amon and I was traveling with like Grant Mosby and these guys, and you're around those guys the whole time in this environment. Now I don't have that environment. So like my training now is to keep healthy. I don't play rugby anymore. I don't play a sport. I'm not surrounded by, guys that are like talking about rugby the whole time and things like that. Like I'm missing something. And that's something that I'm trying to find. Like that shit made me happy when I was a kid. What can I do now in a team environment, team sport, like you playing paddle? It's a little bit of a team environment. Like you're hanging out.
Yeah, I played team sports growing up my whole life. That's also why I enjoyed more the team aspect of CrossFit than individual side. But, I think for most people, if you go back into your childhood and find those things that you really like doing as a kid and you started doing a little bit more of something along those lines today, you'd probably be a happier person.
What do you think you're missing from a memory base? Like if you memory base back and you're like, oh, if I do that now a little bit, maybe I'll be happier. Like not saying that you're sad. But
no, I get you. No, I think it's super. I was just wandering off a little bit there while you were talking, thinking about like if I had a journal of my life, like I'd written down, I did this today, I ate this today, this is how I slept, and this is how I felt over a prolonged period of time, I would have such a better understanding as to who I am and why I am the way that I am around certain things. And I think I would just have a little bit more empathy towards myself. Like I don't actually think that I've developed a strong sense of self-empathy. I'm always like, shut up and do it. Like, don't complain. Yeah, this bad things happen, but make something good out of it. Like, and those are all very positive things, but you can, I think, misrepresent yourself in a certain way where maybe if you're just like, I struggle with the idea of loving myself. Like I love my cat. I love my wife. I could get it. I love the boys that I work with. Like those things make sense to me. And then I'm like, I mean, work harder. Like I don't really there's so many things I can improve where I'm just like,
so there's two things that I had.
Could eat better.
But there's two things that I had in conversation. It was like yesterday I was in the sauna really struggling. I was holding that temperature gauge, getting as hot as I can, just like trying to push myself through. And then the 5 minutes, like the whole thing went like there's 5 minutes to go on the little thing. And I'm like, I got to get out now. And I'm like, but you're soft. Why are you getting out? Like, no, just get out. It's okay to get out now, And then I was having another conversation with a guy yesterday, and they're doing this journey now where they need to go and do charity work. So this guy he helps a lot of people. He's in the health and fitness space. He's helping people on a daily basis. He's helped me without any like monetary value. He's helped me. And I'm like, dude, you are forced into that charity work for the thing that you're doing now. But it doesn't mean that you wouldn't have helped somebody else. And he's like, yo, but I feel bad now because I need to post and share what I'm doing every day. But people are going to see me all of a sudden helping this charity because it's part of the project that I'm on. I'm like, dude, but no, just speak honestly about it. You've been pushed into this boundary to help somebody, help a charity, whatever it is, that you wouldn't have necessarily been moved into help. So like, you don't owe it to anybody to feel bad now that you're like forced into helping a charity. Mm-hmm. You help people on an everyday basis. Like it's not, and that's what I see as well. I help a lot of people. I'm not forced to go and donate time to the Durbanville, children's home or whatever it is. That'll be nice for me to forcefully go do that. But I'm helping people the whole time. So like in this saying, like love yourself, or it's okay to do something for yourself. And it like
it's
don't
hard,
take
it's
it on.
So hard.
Yeah, like don't take
that
it
whole you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're not giving yourself back, it's hard to always keep on giving at the same time. But it's self-appreciation is always hard because everyone's their own worst critic. So it's like you can do better. Why aren't you doing that? And then you live in comparison of the next person or whatever else. And that's just the way the world works. To try to switch that off is, I think, almost impossible. And it can be used for good, but it can be used to sort of sometimes, I think, like put yourself in a space where now it turns unhealthy and you're like you're overdoing something, I think, and that's always that thing of going, okay, is this serving me or isn't it serving me, and to what point is it? So it's like, cool, if I do this, actually, like, let's go harder, but actually that's not helping me because I'm putting me into a more stressed state, or I'm taking away from the actual people who I love because now I'm going to be whatever, and it's just trying to find that balance, and it's always going to be tricky.
I find that balance tough. Like, this is serving me, isn't serving me. Like, within myself, I don't really find that difficult. Like, I'm like, oh, is CrossFit serving me? No. Okay, well, I love CrossFit. I love the community. I just walked away from it. Like, in one day, I was at the box and then I wasn't at the box. That's fine. But for me, it's like relationally, like a friendship or like a connection with a family member. It's like, is this serving me? No. But do I have a responsibility to love and nurture this person? Like, can I just walk away? Like, it's tough. It's really tough because there are things in my life that don't serve me and relationships that I could just be like way better off without, but I still invest in them because people need help. Like, it's tough. Like,
they rely on you. Yeah, they rely on you.
And that's part of it. Like, the responsibility of being a man who contributes to society in a meaningful way is people rely on you. It's an important thing. So, like,
okay, so are we going to sum up that? Because this is like steered off of just the simple memory of like, okay, cool.
But I think your memories are what shape you. And I think like if I could go back, like I say, journaling in my life to see like where was I happy? Like, genuinely, I had good days. I enjoyed this. Probably I was balanced with regards to how I was giving to people, how I was investing in myself. Like, happiness doesn't happen by accident. So I think it would be nice. And I think those are where past memories and remembering the past and appreciating things in the past actually could help you, where you go back and you're like, well, that was a very balanced time of my life. I think we all have those times. So we were more balanced and weren't so balanced. And then you learn from it.
So if I think like obviously marriage and kids, my happiest time was playing sport in a group environment. And it doesn't matter what it was, the fishing, the rugby, the karate, like it was. So I think if I can bring that memory back into my current lifestyle now, I think it'll really benefit me. For sure. Like,
yeah, look, I think you can also achieve a lot of happiness being unbalanced, though. Like, if you have a serious goal that you're going after and you eventually get there, but that happiness was then short-lived, because once you've done that, then you're kind of like, okay, now what? And then that leads to the flip side of that, where, you're not very happy. So it's like, I think there's also a big difference between happiness and fulfillment. Like, looking at it from a bigger picture of like, cool, I have these different sides, and every asset or aspect of that is filled, and not just like, okay, I'm very happy, but it's only this one thing that's driving that happiness. Because then if that one thing breaks, then you got nothing, and you're going to be in a despair. So,
and that one thing will break.
Yeah,
we know that. Life changes. Like, you want to focus on this one thing, and then to the neglect of your partner, and then they leave, and then this thing is over, and like, you can't.